You know
like
that
Queen.
song, don't you?
Do you?
I love Queen.
Good.
This is all.
She did it. That was good. I wish the camera was recording. Well, this video is demonetized. Hey, Marshall.
Hey, Stan.
Welcome back to San Diego.
Great to be back here in San Diego for the Draftsmen podcast. I'm Marshall Vandruff, an art teacher and drawer.
I'm Stan Proko, founder of Proko.com, where we teach people how to draw.
Your ears okay over there, Brandon?
I know, and when that founder came
Yeah.
out of my mouth, I was like, yep, Brandon's ears just died.
Let's roll the intro.
It's the Draftsmen Show. Yeah.
Oh, it's always like the first time.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, it's that watching that intro is always like seeing it for the first time.
Oh, today's topic is going to be about, it's kind of your thing.
My thing?
You're going to be leading today, Marshall.
Am I?
Absolutely.
It's because we're going to talk about environment and...
Well, you put this into our little show planning thing, and I'm not quite sure what we're going to
Did I? What's the topic officially?
It's environmental conditions.
Environmental conditions. Oh, yes,
kind
of
of
course.
environmental reports. Where's the TSA report?
Global warming.
Global warming.
We did talk
Don't
about
get
this
frightened,
once before. Because you're talking about building this environment so that you could focus on
Oh,
things.
ideal. I thought this was different.
Well, this is different. This is the
what the
ideal.
hell are you saying
Well,
then?
now we're talking about environmental conditions for, wasn't it for developing an artist, for developing a talent, so that
Sure.
if you want
I'm
to.
not sure. You
Okay.
start,
Okay.
and I will follow your lead.
Okay, I'll start this because just a few weeks ago in a class, I had a student take me aside at the break to explain that his family not only wasn't supportive, they were anti-supportive. They wanted him to stop trying to be an artist. Now, within a matter of 10 hours previous, I had gotten an email on the same thing, and I also had another student in that class who is one of the best young, promising artists I know who has had some family tension over you shouldn't do this, and I had to address it to the
How
class.
did you address it?
I said, look, the better thing is if you've got a supportive family. So let's talk about what's best.
Yes.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
But
So get a new family?
I need a few minutes on the supportive family thing.
Okay.
Okay. If you've got a supportive family that treats you, even in your adolescence and your college years, with the same kind of respect they treated your childhood, which is to let you give this a shot, that's great. I would not have been a professional illustrator if I had not lived in Jean and Eleanor's home until I was 26 years old, because I got jobs, but I didn't get enough jobs to make my living, and so they supported me. I was the first person in the history of our family of amateur artists and musicians to ever say, I'm going to do this as a professional, and they were confused about it, and there was a little tension about it, but there was never any discouragement. So I had a really good thing, as I know you did too.
Yeah. I lived with my parents till I was 28,
Yeah.
so I lose. You beat me to it, Mark.
Yeah.
You were 26, you said?
Yeah, I could not make a living as an illustrator till I was almost 28. That was where I started to say, okay,
Hey,
now
we're
I'm
like
actually
the same
making my living as opposed to just getting jobs. So that's the ideal. But now let's move to the next point of thought here, which is that you can have support around you that is too supportive. Everything you do gets put on the refrigerator and praised. And you are not up against the real world where when you go out there, you are not going to get that kind of praise. You will simply not get hired because you've got nothing that you're pushing against.
Yeah. There's no struggle.
Right. So if you've got an unsupportive family, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to have the people trying to keep you from running your race by trying to hold you down. But let's take a moment to empathize with them. 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 people who set out to be professional artists are not able to pull it off. And all they know is that if you're going to set out to be an artist, you're going to be just like this other person and this other person, and all of these people that they know, that you're going to end up poor. and they don't know that much about the industry, and they don't know how it actually happens, and so they've got a fear that you're going to be the one that is dependent on everyone else for the rest of their life. So
Is it really 99%?
it's certainly, well, when you look at art school, when you look at people who have become art majors in universities, you figure they're devoting 4 years of this. It's not 1 out of 10 that actually make a living in the industry doing the thing they studied to do.
Really?
Do you
But
think?
there's so many jobs that are...
There are so many
artists.
jobs.
Like, how... I don't get it.
Well, let me...
Are we talking about all creative, like all jobs for artists, or are we talking about just like gallery painters and...
I would make a graphic like this.
Okay.
There are 100,000 jobs or more in Southern California of people that are making their...
Just in Southern California?
Just in Southern California. Of people that are making their living in the creative field. Just Los Angeles alone.
Yeah, okay.
It's going to be many, many thousands. Well, it used to be there was something like 70 or 80,000 members of the Screen Actors Guild. Wow. And that's the members of it.
Yeah.
That's not the ones that are trying to be actors that can't get into the guild.
Okay.
And then when you see the people that are trying to get those jobs, it's going to be in the millions.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's going to funnel down. Now, I'm saying this not to make a point about school or how hard it is, but I'm saying this to say that your family that is not supportive probably has a reason. One of my students, they want him to quit art and go into the military, and he told me, he wrote me a description of what happened in his family history, that he had an uncle who was an award-winning artist who burned all of his work, gave up art, and that the family has since discouraged. You know, it's like in Coco, no musicians in this family. That kind of phenomenon really does happen in life. So it's a struggle if you are the one who has got the budding gift and you've got an environment that is difficult. So now let me get to my last point, because I know I've elaborated a lot here. There is one caveat, one kind of advantage if you've got an unsupportive environment. Back in 1964, a book by Dr. Eric Byrne, a psychiatrist, came out called Games People Play. Transactional Analysis. It's an interesting book about how people play power games in relationships. And almost all of these games are negative. There was one game, 2 actually, that can have some positive effect. One of them is I'll show them. It's a bad game, but it's they didn't believe in me, and I'm going to punish them for it. But there's a more positive variation on them, which is that I am going to succeed because they didn't believe it. They said I couldn't do it. Lucille Ball was told that she did not have it to work as an actress, and then she became the most successful. So you've got something that you can push against, and then there's a more positive variation on it called They'll Be Glad They Knew Me. This is that I am going to succeed. They will wish that they treated me better, but I am going to succeed in spite of that. And so you've got this straitjacket you've got to struggle out of.
Very similar.
They are very similar, but he figured the All Shows Them was more of a punishing thing. The They'll Be Glad They Knew Me will be at least that they get a caveat. That is our child, that is our nephew, that is our person, and they did succeed. And I probably should have supported them more, but at least I get to bask in that success.
Okay.
After all. Now, I say that knowing that that is cold comfort. But it has happened. I've seen it happen with students who had a person in their life that didn't think they could do it, and they put their energy down like a bull and said, because they don't believe it, I have got to compensate for the fact that I don't have cheerleaders, I've got naysayers, and I have got to prove it on my own. Now, that's to say, you can have too much negativity that can drag you down. You can also have too much positivity. And if you just say, well, what have I got left if I got an unsupportive family? You've at least got that. If you've got a fighting spirit, you can say, I'm going to fight that spirit and I'm going to win.
For the parents, though, listening, it's like, even if you believe that it's kind of risky for your child to go into a certain field, do you really want to be the person telling them they shouldn't do it? Like, let them learn on their own. Like, be supportive no matter what it is. I mean, unless it's like criminal, activities.
Unless you're from a family of criminals, it can be a good criminal.
But I mean, if they have a passion for something and you just disagree with it, just go with it. Like, be supportive.
Next to the last chapter of the sports psychology book, you talked about how to be a great sport parent. And it's really how to be a great parent. And it's very short, but it has a lot to do with playing the role of emotional support, because you're not the expert in the field. My parents, because they did not know the field, I remember putting them through anxiety, because my dad in particular, he had built many houses and he did creative work and made his money with it. But Marshall's going to set out to be a picture drawer. Yeah. And I remember there was an energy in him of, and he wanted to help. He wanted to be supportive. It's just that he really didn't know how. And that's where you seek mentors. That's why you go to college.
I think that's okay to be worried. I mean, that just means he loved you. Yeah. He was worried that you were going on the wrong path. But did he discourage you?
No, not at all.
That's
but I remember when I did an illustration that I got $300 for, and I remember he was pleased about that, but he wasn't elated. Yeah. And then I did a little technical illustration of a cutaway of a chord, of a little, like a scuzzy kind of chord thing. And they paid me $750 for it. And I remember saying, "You got paid $750 for that?" I said, "Yeah." And I remember his energy, feeling relieved. $750, took you 2 or 3 days to do it. This could happen.
I guess we were both lucky. We had great parents that supported us.
Hey, well, if you don't have that in your family, there's one thing you can do. You can find a new family. You can find a new team of support.
Oh, not you don't literally mean find a new family.
Find a new metaphoric
get some friends family. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
And that means plugging into a positive community, which is the second thing I deal with. Environment is that environment can have to do with whether you live next to the toxic dump, and it can have to do whether you live in a place where there's never any sunshine, and all these other things can affect your productivity and your mood. Mm-hmm. But by far the most important thing is the people that you are surrounded by. It is better to be in a not that great physical environment if you've got good community going than to be in a great physical environment where your team members work against you and all of the other things that can go wrong. That's worth seeking.
Yeah, where can they find that?
Some of my best students have been the ones that they say, "I'm into this," and they create these little communities. I've had that happen in wave after wave after wave after wave over the last 3 decades. What do you mean
they create the community?
They create community by becoming friends, by hanging out, by doing artwork outside. When the semester's over, now they're going to work on their summer project. I've seen that happen many times, more times than I could even recount. So that's an example of going to the cheapest school possible, but finding the teachers who will serve you. They've got several teachers who serve them, and then finding the peers that will make them stronger and encourage them. And so, that's what that's about. That's seeking a new family. And if you figure, if my parents will just for $200 a month let me have a room to sleep in, I will spend all of my time in these classrooms and around these people that are making me better.
That reminds me of a statistic that I found out about. I wanted to make a video about it, but I'm not sure if I will. And we were looking at Google Trends for searches of how to draw, the search how to draw. And in June, it plummets for like 2 or 3 months for the summer break, and then it goes back up when people go back to school. The search how to draw.
That is not a good thing.
No. That just means that everyone's searching how to draw while they're in school, and they go on summer break and they stop drawing.
Some of these environments can burn people out to where they'll never be an artist now, because they associate it so much with negative feelings. And to me, that happens when everything gets organized around midterms and finals. And I've had students where I had a student where we had to call in the paramedics from having been up for 2 or 3 days on Red Bull and
to do it, like finish a project.
Yeah, to meet the final deadlines.
Oh, jeez.
And so, well, what are we doing? What is the point of this? That's not a healthy thing.
Well, why did they have to? Was the deadline really strict, or like? What did they procrastinate?
Or they take 18 units, and then they've got to get it done. And then when it's done, flop over in exhaustion and spend the summer not doing anything but recovering from what happened in school. Yeah, it's really a bad thing.
Well, do you think that's the case for just a few people, or that's the trend for most people?
It depends on the environment. There are some environments that's the norm. And then there are environments where we did these projects for school, we're done with them. Now, June's here. I don't want to take a vacation. my vacation is going to be this next project that I couldn't wait to get that one done. And that's how Norman Rockwell felt about every illustration he did, that the next one is going to be the best one. Drew Struzan was asked about his illustrations. He said, my favorite one is the next one that I'm going to do, because they've got this enthusiasm for the work. And if that is characteristic of that social environment, I think that's probably a healthy environment for your creativity.
You mentioned something about modern day James.
Modern day James, well, he can tell his own story, but he came into my classroom and told the story. He was going to be a doctor.
He's one of your students?
Well, no, he's not one of my. Well,
or he came in as a guest.
He came in as a guest
after he was already YouTube famous.
Yes, after he was, and students had told me about modern day James, and they were in love with. This was at the junior college. Said, "Do you know about modern day James?" So we started to watch modern day James stuff in the classroom, and then when he came out here, I said, "Let's have you be in the classroom." And I'll ask students, what would you want to ask him? So I called up his cell phone, and he was going to answer. They saw him and they didn't even know who he was, because you don't recognize sometimes a person from what you know him on.
Well,
on
it's
YouTube.
mostly you just hear his voice in his videos.
That's right.
So.
Yeah.
So he was sitting in the back of the classroom.
He was sitting in the back of the classroom.
And then you're like, hey, I'm going to call him up.
And I called him up. Unfortunately, the gag didn't work because the cell service didn't kick
his phone didn't ring?
So he did come up to the front of the class, and we kind of co-taught the class that evening. And he told us his story. He was going to be a doctor. He was going to, I think he even might have started medical school.
Oh, really?
His parents, he made a pitch to his parents. He made a business proposition, essentially, to his parents, that they would give him a certain amount of time to prove himself. And because he created his own deadline for when he would get his YouTube channel together and that kind of thing, he went into overdrive and treated this as if it were medical school, disciplined himself, didn't waste any time, and now he's modern day James.
Wait, what was the business proposition he gave his parents?
That you'll let me live at home for a certain amount of time until I can see if I can get my YouTube channel going.
Okay. And so his parents were not supportive. They were forcing him to be a doctor.
No. They were.
So why did he have to make a proposition?
He changed his mind because instead of going to medical school, I mean, every parent wants their kid to do something like that. I want to be an internet teacher and an artist. And so he pitched to them that he thinks he can do this.
Yeah.
But I'm telling his story, and I'm probably getting it all wrong. James,
let's
if you were willing,
just tell the best possible story.
Yeah, that's the best I can do.
What do you wish the story was like?
What we should do is next time we're going to open up our phone and get him on the speakerphone, and you say, Marshall, you got it all wrong.
Yeah.
But I still forgive you, and then he can clarify it.
He can comment as well.
Yeah.
James, but if you're listening,
James was a
tell
guy
us
who
your story in the comments.
He was being proactive by saying, this is unusual to ask for my parents to support me for a while to do this.
It's not that unusual. We both did that. I mean, we didn't make a business proposition, but we both, as adults, had our parents supporting us.
To make an ultimatum, to make a bet with them, I think I can do this in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. And if I don't, how about if I pay you back this much?
Oh, wait, are you making that
No,
part
I'm
up?
making this up. I'm speculating that could be a proactive way to do it. I mean, some parents are going to say, no, don't do that. I just want you to go to medical school.
It's also the pressure that we were talking about a few episodes ago, where if you got the on and off periods where sometimes you just don't do it and you're a little lazy and you need that pressure to get it done.
Yes.
This is a great way to do it.
That is pressure to get it done.
What else would you like to add?
I'd like to move on to our question.
Really? So we're done?
So let's do the
let's
ad,
take an ad
and
break.
go into the second half.
Oh, you're not playing the ad for us?
Oh no. Crest. Brush your teeth.
How long was that?
What the fuck, man? You brush your own teeth.
That's the ad. The ad is Crest.
9 out of 10 didn't.
Yeah, 9
That reminds me. Cooper loves brushing his teeth.
And he's
Don't
not
even
even 2. And he
Yeah.
does it himself?
He wants to do it himself, and I keep trying to do it for him.
You giving him
Nah,
that
sometimes
bubblegum stuff?
what I'll do is I'll brush it for like 15 seconds, try to like really get in there and just do it correctly, and then I'll let him sit there and like chew on it for 2 more minutes.
I remember teaching my son to brush his teeth, and it was about the age of 2.
Yeah.
And I remember, now you're going to do this. We're going to see if we can do this on your own. And you're going to squeeze the toothpaste tube and just the whole
You
thing.
didn't start brushing his teeth till he was around 2? Or
I was
just when you were
brushing
teaching him
his
to-
teeth for him. until he
Right.
was about 2. And now we're going to do
Yeah.
it. But the first thing he did was took the toothpaste tube and squeezed it all out, and he didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I said, okay, now, see, we're going to have to replace that whole toothpaste tube. It's hard to be patient. But it was amusing, though, to see what a huge job it is to teach a 2-year-old, and not quite 2-year-old, how to brush their teeth. And I remember the thing that went through my mind is that animals raising baby birds, birds have something called instinct. Humans don't seem to have this. You have to teach these creatures everything. And if it's this much energy to teach a small creature how to brush his teeth, then all the other things, tying shoes and all, there's a lot of work ahead.
Yeah.
But at least it's fun.
I don't know. Maybe my kid's smarter than yours.
Yeah.
He seems to pick things up without me having to teach him. How old is your son now?
He's 28.
He won't be.
And he can
offended,
brush his
right?
own teeth, or so he's been
can?
telling me.
Finally. All right. Do we have a...
We have a question.
Yeah.
All right. So from Jared.
Hey Stan, my name is Jared. I'm currently a student in college studying drawing and animation. My dream is to work for Disney Animation Studios. So my question is, what kind of variety of drawings should I be adding to my portfolio now in order to get the best career after school? Thanks.
This is funny how this works out. We're talking about portfolios next time. So yeah, we're gonna dedicate the next episode to portfolios, but we should kind of do a little teaser.
I'm happy to. This is something
Yeah.
that, I mean, Aaron Blaze is the
Yeah, that's
mentor
actually
in
what I was
your
gonna
life.
say. Is
Yeah.
I just interviewed Aaron Blaze, and one of the questions in that interview was, what kind of portfolio should animators have? And he answered that question. So go watch my interview with Aaron Blaze. It's
Yes.
already out.
I've got it queued up, and I started to watch it, and I have not had a chance to finish it. But he'd be one of the first people
Yeah.
to go to.
He says basically what he would like to see is, if you're going for an animator position, don't submit bouncing balls and all the stuff that they teach you at school. Don't submit your homework. Submit actual projects that you did on your own, showing that you could tell a story through body language. Show them that you're a good actor. You can bring life to a character. Don't show them that you know follow through and anticipation. Like, these things could be learned in a few months. Show them that you got what they actually need, which is telling a story, bringing characters to life.
Ralph Bakshi, years ago, was asked about how do you get a career as an animator, and he said, do an animation. Do some animations. Show people what you can do. And that in his time, it was almost impossible to do that. You had to get a couple $100,000 to fund it. Now you can do it on your laptop. Now you can do it with tools that are readily available. And I think he said that around 2009, 2010 to a group of animators. But there's the first thing, is learn to animate, and then prove that you can animate by doing some pieces, and then seek work. And if you're seeking to do this at the level of Disney, well, it wouldn't hurt to know Disney's animation history and to read Frank and Ollie's book, The Illusion of Life. And there's just so many resources. You can live in the commentaries on the DVDs and the extras and the history of it and all of that other stuff to learn about what the evolution of Disney Studios was, which is interesting in its own right. For full animation, if you may know who Stephen Chiodo is. Stephen Chiodo and his brothers have been one of the most respected stop-motion animation studios in Hollywood. He's the guy who animated Large Marge in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Do you know what I'm talking about? The truck
I know Pee-wee.
truck driver woman that
But
turned into a
I don't
monster.
know
It was
who
an
Large Marge is.
amazing moment in film.
And when they finally pulled the driver's body from the twisted, burning wreck, it looked like this.
He animated that. He animated the narwhal in Elf that says, that wishes him the best.
Okay.
And Stephen Chiodo and his brothers wrote and animated and they made a film called Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which has a cult following. I have not yet seen it.
I've seen
But
that.
I know people really, really care about this thing. He has come to speak to my students, and he talked about how he was thinking of doing a stop-motion animation course, but he said that Richard Williams' animation course essentially teaches everything you need, except you just apply it to stop motion instead of to hand-drawn animation. And I've watched that Richard Williams course 6 or 7 times with students. I think it's a great course. I'm not even an animator, but he teaches you, he talks about the sophisticated use of the basics, and that you just learn the basics of animation. And then all the greatest animation is essentially just taking those basics and evolving them into whatever else you're going to do. And he covers most of it, almost all of it, in that Richard Williams Animator Survival Kit Animated. So it's the video version of it as opposed to the book. But that's not about having a career.
Yeah, I mean, he's asking about a portfolio.
That's putting together your skills.
What to put in a portfolio. But I want to say, you're asking about what drawings to put in a portfolio. I guess that's if you're trying to get into 2D animation. Make sure your portfolio is very, very specific for the job you're applying for. You know, if you're applying to work for Cartoon Network, don't show them a bunch of 3D stuff that you worked. And make sure you can show them that you can design characters, you can animate in that style. Just make sure that you know what they're actually looking for. Make it easy for them to choose you in your portfolio.
That's going to be the whole thing that the portfolio thing is about.
Next week?
Yeah,
okay.
make it easy to choose you. Is that you understand what you're connecting the client and the talent.
I'm excited to hear your thoughts on that next week.
Yeah. Cody Shank is an example in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Cody was in my perspective class in 2014, I think it was. And then that online school ended. But every time I would come into the online perspective class, he would be there early and he would have caricatures of 1960s TV show characters. And I thought, this guy knows...
Like actors, right? Caricatures of
females? Caricatures of actors from Hogan's Heroes and things like that. He was born in the 1990s, so this is stuff 30 years before his time, but I recognized all this stuff. And so when the school ended and I kept in touch with him, I even met with his parents on Skype and talked with him about doing an internship. He had this love of retro work from the 50s and 60s, which included Jay Ward Productions, Rocky and Bullwinkle and that kind of thing, which I like that style of animating. And I proposed to them that if he were to intern with me, that he would work on an animation. And so he did that. We worked.
Are you talking about the Proko?
Yeah, that was the thing for you.
Which hasn't been released yet.
It hasn't been released yet.
That's for the perspective course.
Yeah, so we can always cut
come
this
out in 2037.
Yeah, right. We can always cut this out if it's not appropriate.
It's going in. But there is a very, very good animation that's ready to be published when the perspective course comes out that Cody Shank made. I love that cartoon.
And he was not an animator before. He took one or two of the online classes in animating. And before we did this internship, I sat down with Dave Pruxma. Dave Pruxma is one of the great Disney animators. We taught at the same school. He animated Mrs. Potts, Angela Lansbury's character, and lots of other Disney stuff. And I said, look, I've got a guy who wants to get good at limited animation. He's going to do an internship where it's going to be like that Rocky and Bullwinkle stuff. I said, any thoughts about this? He said, the first thing he should do is learn to animate. And that means learn the stuff that the Disney animators and others were developing so much in the 1930s.
Right. Learn the fundamentals.
Yes.
But the portfolio doesn't show that you don't have to show your fundamental studies.
Yes. Okay, but let me carry through with this. He said that the great limited animation in television at the time, this would include Hanna-Barbera stuff, it's not full feature animation. They couldn't do full feature animation because they didn't have the time to work on something for 2 years. They got to crank these things out every week. But he said those animators who came from feature animation, doing stuff for Warner Brothers and MGM and Disney, they were good animators. So then when they go to TV and they got to cut corners and make it simpler, they know what they're doing as animators and they just find inventive ways to do it simpler. So I told Cody about this and he understood, but we figured let's do a little bit of a shortcut, watch a lot of these Rocky and Bullwinkle fractured fairy tales and these kinds of things that they do. And Cody did that and did it until he wired the style of that kind of drawing. And then, bit at a time, we worked for almost 3 years by way of Skype. I've never even met Cody in person yet.
Yeah, me either.
But we worked on it bit at a time, storyboarding it out, getting the voices in there, and then he pulled it off. And the result of this is that without the world knowing who he is yet, you started hiring him as an animator, and doesn't he do, I mean, he does most of your 2D animation
Yeah,
now.
and then anatomy courses. I think halfway through, we start replacing some of the skelly stuff with more 2D animation, and he's the one that does all that. Yeah.
But I admire Cody just because he's been a joy to work with, and he's a hard worker, and he's talented, and he liked that style. So you find somebody who says, I love the 1960s style. Okay, that doesn't mean we're going to be pulling you away from doing this. We're going to find a way to co-travel. And that is a little microcosm of the way many a story is told, that you learn how to do it, you show people, you got to get good enough to do it regularly. That's one of the things that can be a problem. If you take 3 years to do an animation and then somebody hires you to do it and you've got to get it done in a month or two, you've got a problem. So doing the slow motion thing to learn how to do it, then doing another one, and say, now I'm ready to start meeting deadlines instead of just pulling it off.
Oh, yeah. I guess you're saying if you're going to be applying for a job, make sure you're actually ready to apply. Don't just try to put together a strong portfolio.
Yeah. In the industry, there used to be a nickname, and I won't mention the name of the school, but other people have publicly, that they called it the name of that school problem, which is that you spend a year doing an illustration that is so awesome, and then nobody can hire you to do that illustration because you need 1 year to do it.
Yeah.
So you never learn to be a professional by doing it on deadline, but it's okay to spend a year or more doing an animation if that's where you're learning the craft.
Marshall, what's your thing?
I'm going to tell you what my thing has been. I have been living in another documentary. I've only watched this once. It's called The West. It's produced by Ken Burns and directed by Stephen Ives. And it came out in 1996. In 1989, he came out with one called The Civil War. But I didn't have television. I never saw these things on television. And I had no interest in the Civil War when I was in high school when they tried to teach it to us. But everybody said, you've got to see the Civil War. You got to see it. So I watched it on VHS, and it was so moving and so powerful. So I knew that The West would be good, but I never saw it until just this last month. And it is so moving and powerful. And to a person, there's like a total of 12 hours over 8 or 9 episodes. But it puts you into that framework of where you look at what happened on this continent 200 years ago to about 100 years ago. And there is so much horror and glory, and it's not one of those things where you can watch it casually. These are going to be an hour and a half where you're going to be put into looking. It's tons of photographs because the Civil War was documented and the Old West was documented. And so you're going to look into the faces of people who've been long dead, and you're going to hear their stories. And I think it'll be interesting to anyone, but to anyone who lives on this continent, or if you've driven across this continent, which I have a couple times, and all other large portions of it, you will see the land differently. It'll be connected to stories. So I recommend it, but not as casual viewing, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. You will certainly be emotionally moved. And it's narrated by Peter Coyote, who has a voice that sounds very distinctly American, a bit like the classic American sound
things that have a great voice narrator.
Henry Fonda, but with a hippie twist. Peter Coyote's narration alone is
every
interesting
single
just to
thing you
listen to.
bring up. That's like a movie,
Yeah.
or an audiobook. You love it because of the voice.
There are, and there's a guy named.
A great voice.
There's a guy named.
Like this.
There's a Native American named Nomade. I think his name is N. Scott Nomade, who has a beautiful, resonant voice. And yeah, they're interesting people that they interview. So it's a lot of color photography of interviews with people who are talking about this, historians and that kind of thing, juxtaposed with some of the most intense faces of Native American kids in front of the camera. I don't know that they knew exactly what was going on with that camera, but they look into the camera and just, it brings alive the stories of actual people, the story of the railroad happening and all the stuff that went on with that, the introduction of the horse to this continent and how that changed Native Americans' lives. Some of the things you've heard about, like the Trail of Tears and the Wounded Knee Massacre, They show photographs of this stuff too, so it should be rated R in some ways for some of the things that get in front of the camera from these old photographs. But I was prompted to watch it because of seeing Buster Scruggs, and Buster Scruggs was stories about the West. So it's like, okay, now let's take away from the movie version of the West to go to something that's about the real thing. That has been my thing. It's on my mind every day.
Okay. I guess my thing this week is building my dream studio.
I can see why.
Yeah.
This is great.
1 to 2 years ago, I brainstormed like, what would I put in my dream studio if I could build a dream studio? And now I'm like trying to, doing it.
And you're happy with it?
Well, it's not done yet.
But are you happy with how it's going so far?
Oh yeah.
Well, we got this set here.
This is a podcast set.
That's a great thing. Do you have aspirations to at some point actually build your dream studio from a
like
plot
the
of
building
land?
itself?
And yes, where you do the design of the layout?
I don't think so. It was more about having a box and then putting stuff in it.
Yeah.
Like I don't care if I build the actual building.
Yeah.
It's the stuff in it. Yeah.
Well, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's making this podcast happen. This is not happening outdoors in an alley.
It's true. Yeah. Tall ceilings.
Yeah.
We're building artificial giant skylight.
You going to do a stop motion animation studio in here?
I don't do animation anymore.
Okay.
I got Cody.
That's right. Good. Wow, this was a really lousy what's your thing.
What? My dream studio? Come on, Marshall. I brought up my shoes in the first episode. I had headphones.
I love
My
your
dream
studio.
studio.
I love your
Is it
dream
good enough for
studio.
you?
It's wonderful. I am so privileged to be a part of it.
Thank you guys for joining us in the Draftsmen podcast. My name's Stan Rupenko. This is Marshall Vandruff.
That's true.
How many stars do they need to leave us on iTunes?
Leave us the amount of stars that you think that this is worth.
And how many stars
and
is that?
if it's 5, I'm not going to complain.
Answer.
Thanks.
And
And
leave a comment on YouTube.
if you have had an unsupportive environment and you have overcome it, give us the story. Tell us anything that you think. What would you say to a person who says, look, I think I've got talent, but I do not have a supportive environment? What brief advice could you give them?
And what would you put in your dream studio?
What would I put in my dream studio?
No, I'm asking the audience.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care about you.
Yeah, right.
But actually I do. But I think the time's up. But I actually really do. Maybe we should. I want to know what your dream studio is. But
We'll bring up my dream studio another time.
if you want to hear what Marshall's dream studio is, join us in a future episode.
Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
What are those called?
Teasers?
No. When like Lost was a master at that, where it's like a
Oh, mystery box?
what? No.
Lost. Yeah.
Yeah, Lost, but when
Cliffhanger.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
We just left it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
What is Marshall's dream studio?
Oh, let me tell you about my dream studio.